So what do we have here? Santa brought me a little surprise this year, a couple days before Christmas. Really wasn't anticipating buying this car, as usual with a lot of cars. A little shout out to my friend Christian, if you're watching. Thank you for the tip about this car. Very unique car for those that are into Mustangs, and particularly the Boss Mustangs that were made in 2012 and 2013. This is a Laguna Seca edition. Each year for 12 and 13, they made 750 of these. This is though they did do some rare ones for charity, one-off cars. I think they did maybe two in each of 12 and 13. They did charity one-off cars. But outside of those, this is the rarest of the color combinations. On the silver and red, they only made 151 of them, of the Laguna Seca models. In this color, and I'm sure there's some people out there saying, oh, it's a god-awful looking color combination, that's why they did it, and they only made a few, and I don't think the color combination and the desirability had anything to do with what they produced, but because the black one looks just as gaudy with the red wheels, but anyways, it is a rare bird, and what makes this car kind of special is that it was owned by the same gentleman, a 70-year-old gentleman in Louisiana, had this car. He bought it brand new, and I think he had it on consignment at a Ford dealer in Louisiana, which is where I bought it. It has 400 miles on it. So it's still got the window sticker in the window, as you can see. So it's basically about as new as you can get. He did curb one of the rims, which was a shame. And some of the rims have some clear coat issues, which were a Ford factory issue, back, on this particular car. So those will have to be dealt with to make it perfect. But other than that, the paint and everything it's basically a brand new car. And I obviously love Boss Mustangs, for those of you who know me. This is the 11th Boss I have owned. Most of them were 2013 models, but I have owned a couple 2012s. And I've been kind of saying, I've never owned a Laguna Seca. This is the first one of those that I've owned. And I've been saying if I found the right one, I'd probably keep it. The car like this is a great investment car. I don't know. They're just, I know I'm biased because I love the Boss Mustangs, but it's a special car just because they didn't make many of these in the Laguna Seca editions, and really what that means is you get the oddball color schemes on the 12s, and then in 13 they made them in yellow and black. But the color schemes, and then obviously you can see that it has the front splitter, and then if you look down here, there's basically brake cooling ducts, and then underneath the car is a transmission cooler scoop. These cars are a rear seat delete. They only come in, all the Bosses were only manual only. You get the red stitching on the standard Recaro seats, and there's no back seat. In 12, you get the red brace where the rear seat would be. They have special suspension tuning on these cars. That's different than the standard Boss. Different rear wing, applique in the back. What else am I forgetting about that's the Laguna Seca. The Bosses themselves were the reason I've had so many of these cars is they're just cool cars. I think there's a video out there about how Ford made these cars in 2012 and 13. They brought Parnelli Jones, who was the original Boss race champ and the original late 60s Bosses. They brought him out to drive these cars before they got the sign-off to produce them. They wanted to make sure that they were all in on these cars. And they did a fantastic job with them. They are a special car. It has a little different motor. It's a 5-liter 302, obviously, kind of nicknamed the Roadrunner. It has different head on it than the standard 5-liter from the time. A lot of people don't know the head of that motor goes through about 2 hours of machining for each of these cars. And they made a little extra horsepower. I think it was 444 horsepower in the Boss motor. Different pistons, intake. So it's, it is a different car. It's not just a Mustang GT with some stripes and a badge on it. It does have a very special motor. And for a while, these cars were dying down when the GT 350s came out. There wasn't as much interest. But in the last couple of years, with the prices of the new cars going way up, and particularly during COVID, these have gotten kind of a second set of legs. And they really are starting to appreciate, because it's still, I can tell you, having owned, some of the new stuff, GT 350s and even GT 500s, I mean, there's obviously differences in those cars, but you pay significantly more money for those cars on the used market than you will these cars. And that's why I think people are seeing the benefits, of buying a used Boss. And a lot of them have low miles, not 400 miles. But the other thing I forgot, in 2012, these do have those gauges up there, the pod gauges. Those were essentially incorporated into the 2013 dash on the 13 models. I read something the other day that pod, a lot of these parts, like the front splitter, that gauge pod, they've stopped making those things for these. So if you want them, it's pretty much pay whatever the people want for them. And somebody was saying that gauge pod alone is $2,400, which is goofy to me for a couple gauges. But like I said, they've reached that age now where there's getting parts. Some of the special parts are harder to get. The other thing that makes these cars kind of unique, and of course I love sound, is these cars have side exhaust. They have obviously the standard, tailpipes coming out the back, but they also have, if you look underneath here, they do have a side exhaust on each side. You can see that pipe there, and they come from the factory with basically a plate in them that can be removed. Most of these were removed before they ever left the dealer lot, right, Kyle? So if you're listening, I know you know that. Kyle's the expert at taking these out. He many a time went with me when I bought these when they were new. He knew how to take these out in the parking lot. It's not a complicated procedure, but it was fun to do it, because almost all of these, this car has no modifications, but the plates were taken out by the gentleman that owned it before. It's just a must thing to do. And you can put them back in, fairly quickly. The thought was you take it off, take them out, and then come, go race, then put them back in, drive home. Of course, nobody does that. The other thing that was cool about these cars, see if I can pop the hood. Pardon my ignorance for a second. But the other thing that was cool about these cars, and here's the money shot of the motor. Like I said, they're a little different than the standard 5-liter of the times. These cars came from the factory with adjustable suspension under these caps. Both in the front strut top mounts, and then there's also two in there's one on each side in the trunk. And you could basically adjust these at the racetrack between 1 and 5 for firmness. And I can tell you, having run them at 5 and run them at 1, they came set at 2 from the factory. On a 5, it's a pretty rigid car. Of course, today you got magnetic ride and all that good stuff, which is basically the same concept, just from a push button. But these actually at the time were pretty cool. The other thing that was really cool at the time were these cars came with 2 keys. They came with a black key and a red key. And you'll often hear the red key referred to as the track key. When these first came out, Ford was promising the red key, but it wasn't really available for most of the 2012 model year. They were fighting with California, imagine that, on EPA stuff. And I remember at the time there was some discussion whether it would ever happen. But they eventually got it passed. The car is not like the Hellcat where it comes with the red key and that unleashes the power, from the factory. You had to have this programmed. Otherwise, the key is just like the standard black key. But if you had it, once they released the track key software, I think it was $302 for 302, plus an hour labor usually. And the Ford mechanics hated you because these things, they probably did one at a dealership, maybe two at the most. And so nobody knew how to do it. So there wasn't a chance to really learn how to do it and get good at it. The system was extremely slow to download it. You have to program the key, the red key part to the car, and then install the software. And you can still get it today. You can't get it, you can't download it. The Ford dealer can't download it, but you can buy it direct from Ford Racing. And then basically the way it comes, the same thing. The dealer has to program the key, the red key itself, and then you can download the software on a handheld. It's a lot more. It's not $300 anymore. I think it's more like $500 or $600 plus the labor for the key. So it's probably double the cost of what it was when they were new. But anyways, what the track key does is it gives you about 200 engine parameter changes when you use this, including what I love is the basically what I call it's the Lopey idle. It sounds like an old Mustang with a cam, sort of the potato sound, and it's not. I mean, it's not like a big cam car, but it does have a cool sound. The car kind of vibrates a bit and shakes, and it's cool. I mean, it's just a unique feature of these cars that they had. They really haven't done that since then, probably because it was a pain in the ass to administer. But this particular car has had it activated, which is a good thing because it is more expensive and it actually works. A lot of times what happened with the dealers is they programmed the key. The key would say track key active, but they never really downloaded the software. So there's quite a few cars out there where guys are like, it doesn't do this or it doesn't do that. Well, the key was activated, but they didn't load the software. So that's basically useless. So fortunately, this guy the dealer who did this did it right. And like I said, the other thing was odd with the other thing these cars came with was different tires than the standard Boss. They came with Pirelli Corsa tires, which are a stickier compound. For some reason, and I never did talk to the guy yet, though I reached out to him and haven't heard back from him. For some reason, he took those off of this car and put the P0s, which are another crappy tire, on these. That was what the standard tire on the regular Bosses. And my gut is I don't know if he picked up a nail or if he didn't like it that they were too sticky and that they were throwing up rocks. Who knows? There's got to be a reason why he did it. I wish he would have put a better tire on it because these are going to probably have to. If you're going to keep this car, you'd have to replace these tires anyways. They're old. They're from like 2012, 2013, and they were not good tires to begin with. That was one of probably the biggest weakness of these cars from the factory. So I think that's it. It definitely wasn't an anticipated purchase, but it was a good value for what it was, mainly because it was a small dealer in Louisiana who hadn't advertised it. They had zero interest in marketing the car. It was a consigned car, and the guy wanted to get rid of it. I suspect it had been sitting there for a while. So they sold it. It's definitely a car that could go on, bring a trailer, and would be an easy sell with this type of miles. But I may actually keep it. Like I said, I've had 11. This is the 11th one. The first Laguna Seca. If you were going to keep one, this would probably be the car. This would be the one to keep, just because it's pretty much factory fresh. And I do think these will appreciate in value. They're just rare cars, and they have been on several lists of some of the predicted to be most collectible modern day Mustangs, in addition to things like the GT350R. So I do think there's something to be said for that. So everyone's got their personal bias, obviously, on what's their favorite. This is mine. I do love the Bosses, but I figured I'd share it. A couple people have asked me, like, do you just have the old Mustang and the Avalon? And I can now say I have one other which was really an unplanned purchase. The black one's not in the garage. It's getting some stuff done to it, so we'll see how that goes in the next couple days when it comes back. But that's it for now. I hope you all had a great Christmas, and I hope you have a happy New Year. Take care.